Good morning, beautiful people. Hope you're having a wonderful day so far. Today, I want to talk about the debate of should you train things at a long or a short muscle length. There are some advantages and disadvantages to both, and at the end of the day, the decision is going to come down to you. So hopefully this video will allow you to better make that decision. So first, we have the question of, well, why does it even matter? It matters because some muscles have been shown to grow more from larger ranges of motion, from being trained in that stretched position. And some muscles have been shown to grow more just in that range of motion compared to the full range. So, for example, there's the quads. We have some studies from Dr. McMahon. He's the quad guy in my head. And he found that essentially training the quads from about 50 degrees, from about 90 to 50 degrees of knee flexion, which is pretty much 90, making a right angle, and then up to 50 is not very much. So that's not even half the range of motion of a leg extension. He found that the quads grew more doing that than from full range of motion. Not by much, but a little bit. And that's mainly based on their length to tension relationship. And that just is the relationship between the sarcomere length. So the sarcomere is the smallest, most contractile unit of muscle. It's what actually causes muscles to flex. It is where actin and myosin are the two proteins that grab onto each other, pull, and that's how you get mechanical tension. That's how you get muscles and movement. So the sarcomeres, they stretch, they lengthen, they shorten. And length tension relationship just shows at what point on this relationship do different muscles operate, because different muscles operate at different points along the relationship. The relationship's the same. It has an ascending limb, a plateau, and a descending limb. And certain muscles operate on different parts of it. So certain muscle sarcomeres can lengthen and shorten to different degrees, depending on what part of the range of motion you're in. And the plateau is where we have the most internal force. So hypothetically, this is where we're going to be producing the most mechanical tension, and mechanical tension is the sole driver of hypertrophy, most likely. So that is his research, and it's like, it doesn't mean that things just grow better from a super deep stretch. That's what lengthened partials have turned into, is just training things at the longest length possible, not based on the length tension relationship. But even so, certain things are going to grow better from longer length training because they can experience what's called passive tension, which we have titin, which is another contractile, well, it's a non-contractile protein, but it's another protein in your sarcomere, and it's kind of like a spring, and it resists stretch, and it actually pulls on the extracellular matrix, which is in the outside sarcomere. And we think that this is what causes stretch-mediated hypertrophy, or additions of sarcomeres in a series. So instead of regular muscle growth, this is sort of a separate pathway where muscle is added. Your muscle essentially gets longer from stretching. And so that's pretty cool. But only certain muscles can do that because, again, we have the length to tension relationship. So in order for them to produce passive tension, they have to actually reach the descending limb and operate fairly well on it. Again, the quads are a good example. When you think about muscles that can experience stretch-mediated hypertrophy, they have to operate on the descending limb for the most part. The only one that operates on the ascending limb that does this is the gastroc, so your calves, well, part of your calves. And it's kind of weird because it's kind of weird, kind of cool. The hypothesis is that the reason they can experience this is because of the force being translated through the Achilles tendon, which is kind of cool. But again, that's just the theory. So more muscles might be able to experience it than just the ones that are on the descending limb. But the ones that we've seen experience it are quads, hamstrings, glutes, and pecs, I believe. I don't think I'm missing any. Oh, and gastroc, obviously. So those ones all clearly benefit from training at a long length. And the other ones that likely would are muscles that are in their fully stretched position and operating near the plateau of the length tension relationship. But the problem with longer length training is it is a lot more fatiguing. We have seen, and fatiguing is mainly from the muscle damage that it incurs. So it causes a lot more damage. And this is mainly because when you stretch a muscle, you have stretch activated calcium ion channels. So calcium ions are required for any muscle contraction. You need calcium to form cross bridges, to actually move your muscles. And you have calcium pumps that are supposed to take it out, but nothing in the body ever works perfectly. So some of the calcium stays around and it gets pissed off that it got left behind. So we've got proteases and calpain that come in and start breaking shit. And that's how you get excitation, contraction, coupling, failure. Whoa, big word. I know. Basically just means that your muscle can't produce force anymore. So coupling, excitation, brain. So your brain, it's taking the signal from your brain and turning the electrical signal from your brain into a chemical signal that causes the muscle to contract. That's all it is. And when you think about it as there's like a bridge that this electrical signal goes across and it turns into a chemical one. And when calcium ions get left behind in the cytoplasm, they call in their homies, the calpains, the proteases, and they come and break the bridge. They come and they slide for their homie. That's kind of how it works, if I really dumb it down. And obviously, more calcium ions means higher likelihood of them being left behind. More calcium left behind, more calpains, more excitation, contraction, coupling, failure, more damage that needs to be repaired. So the question is, can we do, if longer length training does give us slightly more hypertrophy, the question, is it worth it for the added damage? Or could we just do a shortened position movement and just do more volume? So if it's like something like the glutes, or we can just use the biceps, for example. So the biceps, right? If I'm gonna train them at a long length, I guess what's something that stretches really well that you can, hamstrings. Let's do hamstrings. So if I'm gonna do something like an SLDL, where I'm just stretching the hell out of them, or I could do a seated or a lying leg curl where there's barely any tension in the lengthened position and it's basically all in the shortened. Would it be better, even if I grow more from doing the SLDL, would it be better to just do maybe, 3 or 4 sets of the lying leg curl instead of 1 to 2 of the seated, and causing that extra damage that I have to recover from? This is where things get a little muddy, and it depends on your split, right? I think if we're trying to train more frequently, I would say to opt for, I do think you should train things in their lengthened position because they do grow a little bit better, but I don't think all of your training should be in that lengthened position. And I also think you need to be smart about it, because if we know that it's going to be more damaging to train things in their lengthened position, then let's just do it. Let's structure our workout to have the lengthened position movements after the shortened ones. That's how I like to program. That's how my coach programs. So in the case of I'm doing a lying hamstring curl and a seated hamstring curl, or an SLDL, I would do the lying hamstring curl first because it's going to be less fatiguing, it's going to cause less damage, and then go into my longer length ones. And I think that's the smartest way to do it. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to go all in on one or the other. I am a big fan of just covering your bases. So why not just do a little bit of lengthened training and shortened training, but just do it smart like that? So triceps, right? I do overhead extensions and extensions with a neutral shoulder, with a neutral arm, the arm by the side. I just do the overhead last. Simple. So that way I can reap the benefits of it and not have it affect my other lifts as much. And again, the differences that we're talking about here are very minute. But I will say that I don't think it's a good idea to really train only in the shortened position. So anytime that we've compared partials, where they'll do lengthened partials where they're only doing the first part of the movement, shortened partials where they're only doing the end range versus full range of motion, pretty much across the board, and given this hasn't been done in every muscle group, but normally when they do that, the full range of motion group, the growth is normally very similar between the full range of motion and the long length partials, when the long length partials will sometimes beat it out by, again, just a tiny bit. But I've never seen a paper where the shortened partial grow as much as full range of motion. They never grow more, and they don't even grow as much. So definitely, if you're going to do partials, do lengthened ones. But again, is it going to be worth it for that extra damage? It's harder to standardize a partial. Standardization is very important just for tracking progress. And then the other practical implication is joint stress and shear and longevity. Because if we are doing something like lengthened partials for leg extensions, we're gonna have to do more weight. So that's more shear on your tendons, and tendons don't like that, to be honest, right? They need, and I know for myself, I messed around with lengthened partials. Optimal length partials is what Dr. McMahon has coined them. I messed around with optimal length partials for a little bit, and you do have to use a lot more weight, which is already a pain in the ass on extensions. And that shit fucked my patella. I'm not gonna lie. That was brutal. So the other thing is the longevity standpoint of, it's probably a good idea to train through an entire range of motion just so that you're strong in all those ranges of motion. Because that's the other thing that we've seen is, this is the principle of specificity, where the strength is normally specific to the range of motion that you're doing. So normally we see this a lot with unilateral work versus bilateral work, is the unilateral group will be stronger in the unilateral movement, unilateral 1 rep max. The bilateral group will normally be stronger in the bilateral 1 rep max. So it's, again, you just want to be, and then same thing with the partials. So with something like a leg extension, you probably want to be strong at all of these different joint ranges of motion, just because you're a human that does things outside of the gym. And I really don't think, again, this is, you can make this decision for yourself of if you think it's worth it, but I don't think it's worth it to be, maybe to get a tiny bit more growth, to grow a little bit faster and potentially have just worse joints, because you're gonna get to the same place eventually. It's just that training at completely long lengths might get you there a little bit faster, but you're gonna get to the same place eventually. So I would rather do it the safe way and make sure I can continue to train rather than do it, because what's really the point if you grow a little bit faster but then you get hurt and you have to take time off, or you have to ease back on volume, then the guy who was doing the less optimal version but can keep training is gonna probably grow the same amount. So that's my kind of boring take on it, is just that longer length seems to be a lot better for most of these movements. And so when you're choosing resistance profiles, you probably want to choose things that are hardest in that lengthened position. But you shouldn't only train in the lengthened position, and you should put your lengthened position movement last, after your shortened position movements. Because, and I don't even think, when I'm saying shortened position, I'm more so mid-range. I don't think you should really train anything with an extremely ascending profile. If you can change your resistance profile on anything, I think making it descending or at least flat is probably the best bet. I don't think anything really benefits from just a pure ascending profile. And again, resistance profiles probably don't really even matter that much for muscles that, for single joint movements that are only working one muscle. They probably matter a lot more for muscles, for movements where there's multiple muscles involved. So think of things like compounds, or really anything regarding the legs, anything regarding hip extension, because you have so many hip extensors. And hopefully you learned something. It's kind of a ramble, but drop a comment, follow, subscribe. Catch you in the next one. Peace.